They just saw record warmth this past weekend.
That's right. And then this morning, northern Wisconsin woke up to frost and freeze alerts. But places like Green Bay, well, they just got into the upper 80s on Friday. So a bit of a temperature swing.
Yeah, the roller coaster ride continues. Let's talk about somebody who's been on that ride. Welcome inside to another edition of Walks Wednesday. We'll get into this and much more. Tom, looking good out there on the patio.
We are decorated for fall out here, my friends. We got the fire going. It has. I've got my seatbelt fastened for this roller coaster ride. Like you mentioned, Milwaukee hit a record high last Friday. We almost tied a record high on Saturday. We were in the mid to upper 80s, which is very rare for us this time of year. And now we've gone in the other direction, where we dropped into the 60s today, a high of 60 officially in Milwaukee today. So they always say if you don't like the weather, wait a minute and it'll change, right? And, well, that held true for us over the last couple of days. Big swings in our temperatures around here.
And now, Tom, on the East Coast, we're actually dealing with our own set of problems. Not a big swing in temperatures, but we have a nor'easter that's going to be aiming towards us by this weekend. And I kind of want to talk and pick your brain because I grew up here in the Northeast. I know that you've been here for a while as well and know the area really well. Talk us through what your nor'easter would be, the lake effect snow and the difference between, say, lake effect snow as well as maybe lake enhanced rain.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So we live, of course, right next to a great lake. Lake Michigan is just a few miles off to my right. And it's interesting because this time of year, and especially in the winter, we can get lake effect rain and or lake effect snow. And that's if the wind is coming just out of the right direction. Now, as we're talking this nor'easter in the Northeast, you know what happens, right? When you get that onshore wind, that moisture that comes in from the ocean. Similar type of a pattern here in the Great Lakes when the wind is just out of the right direction and the lake is not frozen in the wintertime, and the temperature difference is exactly right between the lake surface and about 5,000 feet. Well, then we can get lake effect snow. And it's really interesting because lake effect snow is actually snow that forms in the absence of a big storm system. So it's forming solely from the wind blowing off of warmer lake water, plus the cold air aloft, giving it that instability. So it's purely generated by the winds off of the lake. Meanwhile, you brought up something called lake enhanced, which sounds pretty close, right, to lake effect, but that little difference is actually a big difference in the fact that lake enhanced snow is essentially lake effect snow that is enhancing snow that's already falling. So the difference is one doesn't have a storm system with it. It's purely lake effect snow. The other one has a storm system that's already snowing in the area. Then you add that lake moisture on top of it, so you get heavier snow bands. This, you guys, is why I have so much gray hair here in the upper Midwest, because there is a lot when it comes to the different factors when it pertains to lake effect versus lake enhanced.
Yeah, and Tom, I think I even saw it play out recently with that cold front that came through. You had lake enhanced rain on the eastern side of Lake Michigan, right? Because you're situated right on the western side. So you had about a ½ inch or less, but you get over towards Kalamazoo or Grand Rapids, and they're looking at 1 to 2 inches of rain. And it seems like that enhancement. I want to ask you now about the Great Lakes in and of themselves. They seem very warm. And so is there concern for you and a lot of people, of course, near the Great Lakes about that impending first lake effect snow event?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Lake Michigan is sitting right now at record warmth. And that actually goes back to 1995 when records were kept. We're at about 67 degrees for a water temperature right now, about 7 degrees above average. And so you bring up a really good point here in that as we get into lake effect snow season, which is not that far off, it can come very quickly around here. Yes, that is certainly a concern, especially if we get some of that cold Canadian air just above us and then the wind just out of the right direction. And Steve, you mentioned Kalamazoo, Michigan. The prevailing winds, right, in our country, the westerlies, they go from west to east, right? So that's why Kalamazoo gets a lot more lake effect snow than Milwaukee, because the winds are typically out of the west. But if we get the setup that's just right, if we get what's called a fetch out of the northeast. That is where the wind is blowing across the large part of Lake Michigan, and it comes in from the northeast into Milwaukee. It picks up all that moisture, and we get dumped on with lake effect snow. But it's a little more rare here in Milwaukee than, say, in Kalamazoo. But I think you raise a very good point. If the lake waters stay warm, that could certainly increase the lake effect snow potential and lake enhanced snow potential as we head into the colder season.
Yeah, and I just saw Tony. He walked in. He always loves hearing about the lake effect snow machine turns on, right? It's that machine that's looming out.
Yes.
I want to ask you something, though, about that first event or what you would see off the Great Lakes, because snow is not all the same, right?
Yeah.
You could talk about that wet snow and it feels like cement. Is that a concern when you talk about the early stages of the lake effect snow?
Very much so, yeah, because you're talking about more water content. So warmer air can hold more water, right? Colder air holds less water. So that's why in January, February, when it's really cold up here in the upper Midwest, it's that kind of snow you can almost brush off your windshield with a brush, right? But in the early and late season snows, when it's still warm outside, that can hold more water. So yeah, it could be like concrete. And we actually tell viewers a lot, you got to be real careful when you shovel that concrete type snow, because that's heart attack type snow, right? I mean, if you're not being real careful shoveling that can be a real big issue. So we're watching that. We're watching what we call snow ratios, liquid to snow ratios, as to just how heavy and wet that snow is, because that will also determine how much it piles up.
A lot that goes into it. And look, Tom, I think you look like a silver fox. I think the gray hair looks good. But
Oh,
I'm starting
what
to
a guy.
understand
What a guy.
why you got gray hair. Because as you're describing all this, I'm looking at
like
Kiana
a lot.
like, look, I'm glad we're just going to stick to like the totals and move on real quickly versus the nuances of the snow water equivalent. That's got to be tough. Hey, Tom, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you for another Watch Wednesday.
Thank you guys, and good luck with the nor'easter this weekend. Try to stay dry.
Thank you. This man knows. We're going to be
Yeah.
locked in over the weekend. Well,